Hello everyone, welcome to segment surgery number 3. So for this session, we'll be going over mathematics, the best subject possible. Who here loves maths? Just wondering, I'm trying to get some sort of research for the chat. So do you guys like maths? Please be maths, assuming that you actually know and you've seen the maths before. Yeah, so one person said love-hate relationship. I've been there, done that, 100% know that. I love and hate it at the same time. It can be the most beautiful and most satisfying question or topic in this case, but they take so long, sometimes it's not even worth your time. It really isn't. So yeah, mathematics, that's maths for you. Okay, so for those who don't know who I am, my name is Martin Pereira. I am essentially an education consultant. So my job is to get people into the best universities. And the difference from an education consultant and tutor is we have to be much specialized because I work with a lot of schools, international students. So I've worked with some big name schools before. And I've essentially, my job is to defy the odds of students. So I have a lot of students who come to me and their chances aren't that good. And essentially I try to make them essentially competitive in the admissions process. So it's a bit different. I'm a member of the IACAC, so the International Association of College Admissions Counselors. So essentially, this is an association with 1,000 universities, 1,000 or a bit more, like 1,500 secondary schools across the world, and 500 people across the world, like me, education consultants. So as for the UK, I'm one of the 20 people in the UK who are I'm one of the 20 education consultants in the entire United Kingdom who are part of the IACAC. So as far as qualifications go, I would say you are in quite good hands. I've partnered with Jesus College, Oxford. So you might see one of my videos on YouTube. So if you Google Martin Pereira, ACE BMAT, Jesus College, Oxford, you should find my video on YouTube. So it was more of a webinar, really. But yeah, so I've helped students to get offers at Oxbridge, also universities overseas. So if anyone's here applying for the Chinese University of Hong Kong University, I've helped students to apply for those universities as well, and also US universities. So those include Harvard, Stanford, Yale, MIT, and all those big names as well. So yeah, experience-wise, I don't look that old, but I definitely have a wealth of experience. I took quite a few A levels, as you guys can see, and my BMAT scores was pretty good. And I don't think I have to go into more about my qualifications. I won't dwell too much on this. Okay, so I own our /BMAT exam. So it's a free community. It's used by, well, thousands of students every year. This year, we're actually getting quite a few more students than last year. So last year, we had about 20,000 or 30,000 unique visits. So these were from teachers, students, and school as well, and parents. So yeah, I highly recommend you check this out. It's a free platform. We give people quite a lot of advice there, and it's used by YMCA BMAT candidates. So if you hadn't heard of it, here you go. I created a free student. It's not really it's more like a frequently asked questions guide. So all these questions that you guys write, people that have asked me in the past 3 to 4 years, I've written them here. So how do I prepare for the BMATs? What results should I use? When should I take the BMATs? What is the BMAT? Why is it BMAT? No, not the last one. But yeah, so as you guys can see, it's quite insightful. So I highly recommend you check this out in your own leisure. Okay, so what will we get away with? First things first, concise info, the surgery. So let's look at what you must learn without wasting time. Answers to your queries as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to send them in the chat. I'm more than happy to take my time to answer them carefully. And finally, we'll go through some questions as well. So we'll go through as many questions as possible within the time frame. Okay, so maths. So um, maths is one of those subjects in the BMAT, which is, well, it's hated by most, but loved by a few because it takes so much time. And I believe that a lot of you can agree with this. It's one of those questions that it just takes so much time. What do you guys think, chat? Do you agree with me in this? It's usually the topic that takes the longest. Mm-hmm. Great. So, as you guys can see from this, I've included a picture of a famous physicist, and then I included the picture of a famous mathematician photoshopped into it. So I hope you guys can recognize both of them. It gives me like 2017 vibes, but yeah, that was just a bit of an Easter egg that I included there. Yeah, a famous mathematician and a famous physicist. Um, yeah, that was just a bit of an Easter egg. Okay, so BMAT. So BMAT is a 2-hour exam. It takes 2 hours. It has 3 sections, and it's going to cost 775 quids um, in the UK and 100 quids outside of the UK. Also, you have examination fees. So if you are sitting at in a private center, then you might have to pay a bit more because you have to pay them to invigilate you. The admin fee, that typical fee that is just there to charge you more. Yeah, happens. Okay, so it has 3 sections. The first one is section 1. So it's a section with 52 questions, and it's critical thinking and problem solving. You have an hour to do it. Section 2, you have biochem, physics, and maths. You have 7 questions for biology, 7 for chemistry, 7 for physics, and 6 for maths. You have half an hour to do those 27 questions. And finally, section 3, so that is essay writing. With the essay writing, it's more about the questions. They vary a bit each year, but usually you have one question which is philosophy, one which is, well, it's a bit more science. It's more about the duty of science, something to do along those lines, like scientific methods. And finally, the third one is medical ethics, or something to do with like the medical profession itself. Some people, they still believe that the veterinary medicine question is still in the BMAT. No, it's not. It has been, well, they've been discontinued since 2016, 2017. So yeah, there is no vet med question in BMAT anymore. Just do bear that in mind. Okay, so registrations has now opened for the BMAT and will close in about 18 days, give us a, well, what's today's date? It's going to close in 29 days. Quick math. Yeah. So those 3 applications, they open now and they close on the 30th of September at 6 p.m. UK time. So if you are from a low income background and you can't afford this fee, feel free to apply for this. Also, your school may pay for it as well. So just ask a school if you are still in school. Yeah, UCAS deadline is on the 15th of October, 2022. And let's assume that you submit your application, your BMAT goes well, you'll get your result, well, everyone will get your results, no matter how well they do, on the 25th of November, 2022, usually at 9 or 10 p.m. Usually it's 9 a.m. Universities will then shortlist you from the 18th of November. Yes, so a week before your results. So this is usually for some Cambridge colleges. They usually, well, some of them, they just like to get a bit ahead of themselves, and they just start shortlisting it because they get your scores a bit earlier than you do because of admin stuff. So yeah, and that can go all the way up to March 2023 for universities like UCL and Imperial. Also, a lot of universities like Leeds, Brighton Sussex Medical School, and Lancaster. Also, if you're international students, Kiel. Those can go all the way to March, sometimes even later if they feel like it. It's quite rare though. But as a good rule of thumb, these are the dates they should expect to hear back from BMAT universities. Okay, so section 2, as I said, has 27 questions, have half an hour. Okay, so BMAT scoring for 2021. Can you guess me what the most common scores were? I promise it's not a trick question. Yes, scores. So what were the most common scores? Mm-hmm. 3.5 to about 4.5. I would even go further, saying like something like around the lines of 5.5. So visual vision has pretty much, well, about 80% of BMAT candidates, give or take 70, 80%. So yeah, as you guys can see, do you guys think that this is a healthy distribution? Does this look like it's a normal testing season, or do you think something happened? Do you think this shape looks good as a great boundary, or do you think someone has messed up and got fired? What do you guys think? Yeah, some people say pretty normal, which is I'm not sure about that. Look up the difference between these schools, these ones. Also, why is 6.5, which is harder, bigger than 6? It's well, it was more of a catastrophe, really. Someone has probably lost a job over this. Unlucky, mates. Well, point is, yes. So last year the BMAT was online. So do we have any people that are retaking the BMATs? Anyone that wants to say hi? Anyone that took the BMAT last year? Right. So do you remember that there was 3 testing seasons? So essentially what they did was, so seating 1, the normal one, people had technical problems with that. Some people didn't sit their tests or they retook it. Then they had testing season 2, and then testing season 3. Do you know what was genius though from that part? Genius in the most least less genius way, if I'm trying to put it this way. Well, they thought it would be a great idea to sit the exact same papers for all 3 testing seasons, as they didn't think that the questions would be leaked. Not all of them were the same. They at least tried to do some damage control, but a lot of the questions were repeated. So guess what? People did the exam. The thing is, imagine that your test crashed in section 2, and then you didn't. You retook it next week, and then guess what? Section 1, you did it already. You already did section 1. So guess what? You have enough time to do it again, and now you have more time to check the errors. You probably remember how to do the questions as well. They look familiar. And then some of them even redid it again, 3rd time. So the boundaries, what happened was a lot of people cheated, which is why you see this kind of weird curve. And even then, it doesn't look like a normal distribution. A normal one would be something like this. As you can see, the 1s were too high because people's stats crashed. These scores here are just too high. A 6 is way too low. It shouldn't be that low. 7 looks a bit too high as well, ish. So good news is this year the BMAT is on paper. So guess what? No more cheating. No more Cambridge assessments messing things up. Cambridge assessment is like me when it comes to technology. They always mess something up. Cambridge assessment, if you see this, I love you. I'm just playing. Well, I'm not. But yeah. So as far as testing goes, do not be too worried about boundaries, because 2020, 2021 were unusual years. So what I'm saying to my students is, this year it's a perfect opportunity for those who get help from companies, tutors, whatever. And here's my case. So can you guys tell me when half term starts for you guys? Some of you might already know this. I'm sure some of you know it. So when is half term for you next month? Can someone tell me on the chat? I want as many of you to tell me this. When is half term? Okay, one person said it's 24th of October, after BMATs, end of October, the day before the BMATs. Okay, 16th of October. Okay, so as you guys can see, you have either a day or two to prepare for the BMAT at home, or you still have, or worst case scenarios after. Guess what? Before this, the BMAT was in November. So what was the case is that you had 2 more weeks to prepare for the BMAT, and those 2 extra weeks were essentially 24/7 study sessions. Like, you had so much time because you didn't have school. You could ignore your biology teacher's emails. You could ignore the teacher that was asking for your marks all the time. You know, there was a lot of things that you could do. But now, as it has been pushed back, those boundaries will decrease for sure, because people will be less prepared for this test. However, they will not be decreased by as much as you think. Why is that? So in 2022 applications for this year, 2021-22 cycle, there were 6,000 reapplicants compared to about 3,000 in 2016. So the number of reapplicants and total applicants reapplicants has doubled for the past 5 years. It's increased from about 3,500 to 6,000 since 2019. It's crazy. Medical school places are somewhat constant as well. So yeah, application-wise, for the past 5 years, there's been an increase of about, well, I have the data here. Why am I doing this? I'll show you the data in a sec. Okay, so what are the key mistakes in the BMAT? People panic. So you may get an answer which is not one of the answer choices. They might try to redo it because you're like, I can show you this. I'm not, this unprepared for the test. Then you did it once, you did it twice, you did it 3 times. Next thing you know, question 10 minutes left for the test. And you're like, wow, I have to stop. I have to just get on with this. So yeah, a lot of people start panicking because they get obsessed with the question. And then yeah. Bad time management. If you can't do the questions quickly, skip it, because for mathematics questions, they usually take the longest out of every single question in section 2. So science is a lot more plausible to do in minutes, whereas the mathematics questions, they take close to 2 minutes. They take a lot longer than science questions because, yeah, just because they decided to make them harder, really. So maths requires less application and more, well, problem solving. It's more about you solving problems, whereas with science, mostly biology and chemistry, physics is also getting there as well. They get a bit more problem solving. They just ask you to do, you have to interpret some data. You have to essentially know what to do straight away, and if you do it, good stuff. With maths, you just have to go along with it as you go, and hope that you get the right answer. That's a very oversimplified view. However, I'm just trying to simplify things as much as I can for the session. Also, lack of planning. So some questions are like puzzles. So think about the method before attempting the question as well. Because what if you think a question is easy, then halfway through it's hard as hell, and you've wasted so much time doing it. Yeah. Just think about the question and think, can I solve this in a minute? If you can't, like, just look at it for like 5 seconds. And if you think, no, just move on. Okay, summary for the main question types. So again, you have 6 minutes for maths. You have just above a minute per question. And the most common types of questions on topics are algebra. They come up about 50 times since 2003. You have geometry as well, stats, probability. So those are the most common topics in BMAT. And some of you might be thinking, okay, so awesome. What's the difference between stats and probability? So if you think that, can you just let me know? If you think, what's the difference? Okay, no questions then? Okay. Okay, so systematic approaches. So you might be asking, Martin, what are these so-called systematic approaches? Well, essentially, there are methods which are either for the whole paper or question specific. And these methods, they help you to score, well, this score like I did in BMAT, essentially. So for those who don't know, I scored a 9 in the BMATs. It was actually this paper as well. So this was my score over here for section 2. So yeah, quite the try hard, as you guys can see. You can probably see me if you look hard enough in that boundary right there. You can probably see my face. But yeah, so yeah, my score was a 9 in section 2. I'm very proud of it. It took a lot of hard work, but it's definitely not impossible. Getting a 9 is a lot easier than you think. So I've actually taught some students. So I have some students from schools and something like privately, and they essentially tell me, like, Martin, I thought that the 9 was so hard. After learning what to do, it feels so easy. One of my students, Muriel, if you're watching this, he was telling me that he got upset because he didn't get at least an 8 or 9 in his papers when he was preparing. Like, these are like the new papers as well, not the old ones. So yeah, that really reflects on how much improvement he can make. He was starting with 4s. So yeah, I'm very proud. But here's not just an anomaly. Everyone here could do the exact same if they have the right guidance. It's definitely possible. The BMAT is all about, can you support things? And can you do something in a way which no one has thought about? Because let's be honest. So who here uses a resource to prepare? So have you guys started preparing for the BMAT? If so, do you use any resources? Can you tell me what resources you use as well in the chat? Good stuff. Okay. Right. So all of you are saying pretty much the exact same thing, right? So in terms of prep, you guys are using the same resources. Right, guys? Well, do you think that you're getting a major advantage if the methods that you use are the exact same as everyone else? Okay, so some just nope. The thing is, if everyone's using the same method, it's like the UCAT. If everyone's using the exact same approaches, how do you stand up from the crowd? You can't do, can you? It's like if you see the competition, let's think about this. Who are you competing against? People who get A stars at A level, students who some of them are getting hundreds, if not thousands, of hours in additional tuition, etc. And yeah, those are like the top end of the spectrum though. But this proves a point that most resources that people use, they do not give them an advantage just because. So you might have noticed that some of the resources that you use, you're not seeing that score increase. And that is normal. And the reason for that being normal is just because people, they haven't really tried to stand out from the crowds. A lot of these books, and I would go as far as saying some courses as well, some tutors, they do not really understand what it takes to get a good score. Some of them, they might get a good score themselves, but that does not mean anything at all. So I believe that all of you probably got a good grades in English at GCSE. Do you think that you can teach someone to get your grades? Just wondering, do you guys think that you can teach someone English GCSE? I could put you in a classroom today and you start teaching them. Maybe you would not be confident with this, and that is normal. The thing is, a lot of tutors, they have the exact same approach. Some of them, they might have already gotten in. Some of them got good scores, but they have no idea how to teach those tests. They teach stuff they've learned from a generic course. People don't see any improvements because the examiners already know about the strategies. And then, they'll make the questions harder. or they'll make a question which makes your methods inefficient, which is what's happening quite often. So some of you might have tried to use logical form in section 1 for critical thinking. You might have noticed it takes ages in the new questions because they are so long and there's a lot of reading. Some of the questions themselves, they're a bit more vague when it comes to what's the premise is. So has this happened to you guys? Just wondering. Just trying to understand how everyone is in terms of prep. Okay, while the chat is typing, I'm just going to go over this. So in 2016, we had 17,000 first-time applicants. In 2022, this stat has already been released, by the way. In 2022, we had about 29,000 first-time applicants and about 6,500 re-applicants. Well, this does not sound right. It's the opposite way. So we had 29,000 applicants, something give or take. I don't remember the exact stats. And then you had, let me just try to do some quick maths. So it's going to be 25,000. Yeah, no pressure. So yeah, as you guys can see, the number of first-time applicants has decreased quite a bit, but the number of re-applicants is so long. It's getting out of control, essentially. And guess what? These people here are the ones you have to worry about. And why is that? Well, they've already been through the tests. They knew how to prepare. They know what went wrong. Some of them even have tutors now because they want to make sure that they get in because they already waited a year and they're like, I don't care what it costs or I don't care what it takes. I'm going to get this off this year. So in a way, they've already been humbled. They know that the BMAT's hard. So these are the applicants they have to worry about. And as there are just about 9,000 places for medical schools all across the UK, it's getting more and more competitive. Mostly because of these re-applicants, they are very stubborn. And a lot of them, like, I know one re-applicant myself, he got in touch with me and he got 7s last year. So for the records, 7s are scores around this area here. They got rejected post-interview. But as you guys can see, these people are reapplying. So it really makes you think, what score are the people going to get? Like these candidates, some of them, not all of them, but some of these candidates, they are a serious problem. So how do you stand out from the crowds? You learn strategies which those people don't know about, or they might try to do the same, but it really depends. And how do you learn strategies is your question. So you might be asking, Martin, how do you get 9 then? And how have you helped others to get 9s? Well, the answer to your question is you have 2 approaches. The first approach is you do questions, you try to do as many as you can, and you try to write down your approaches for each one of them. So that is your free approach, essentially. That's what I did. I did not really have, I had a tutor, but all the approaches that I found them useful for the BMAT. I actually have a lot of resources for the BMAT, and I found most of them too generic. They were not helping my score. So what I did was I did loads of papers and I tried to get some edge on the competition. And yeah, I ended up scoring 9. So that is your first approach. Second approach is you essentially get a tutor or you go to a course, even though I think like most courses aren't that helpful. Some of them might be, but a lot of them, it depends on your stage. Like if you started the BMAT now, then a course might be good for you because that can help to catch up with other applicants that started early. However, there is a big but here, or a big however. You should not be expecting those generic words to make a big difference because everyone is using them. The tests, essentially examiners, they know what everyone else is doing. So they will not be giving you a major advantage. You have to be creative. We have to get someone which is creative, which I believe it's a bit pay to win. I do agree with you. However, that is just how the system is. That's literally it. it's quite a mess. There is so much C that I have to see, and if I speak, I'm in trouble. But yeah. Yeah. Anyways, so let's do some questions, shall we? So first one, which of the following? So this is like a past. No, this is like a specimen paper question. Okay. Okay, so this is this question. So 2 minus, so you have to simplify essentially. They have some options here. They ask us to simplify. Okay, so 2 minus, I can't really see that you have to cancel this out. It's most likely going to be this. So it's 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. Assume it's something that's I'm tempted to, it's going to be 2x squared plus 1, 100%. I'm just looking at the options. Sometimes they help you as well. Sometimes the options, they can really help you. And as you can, I can see straight away that this is going to be this squared. So 2 minus 2x plus 1 over 2x plus 1 squares, and it makes sense because it gives you 4x squareds plus 4x plus 1. The math adds up. So cancel and cancel just like Twitter, and then you have 2 minus 1 over 2x plus 1, and then you multiply essentially this by 2x plus 1 on both sides. So you can do minus 1 over 2x plus 1, which gives you 4x plus 2 over 2x plus 1 minus 1, which is 4x plus 1 over 2x plus 1, which is A. This looks right. So any questions there? So as you can see, like there's not, well, for maths mostly. For maths, you don't really have those magic bullet questions, you know, where you can just, there's a specific trick. Some of them are meant to just be lengthy because they're essentially trying to balance the paper out. Some questions are a bit shorter, some of them are a bit longer. And usually they use maps as a way to slow everyone down. That is just how it is, I'm afraid. So yeah, do you guys have any questions on this particular example here? Anything you want to add? Sure, can go through the workings again. Okay, so first thing first, we know that we are going to be multiplying something by a factor here. We just know these kind of questions, like admissions test questions, when you do a lot of these, you just know. You will need to cancel out, or you have to factorize. In this case, both. So you have to factorize this. So you factorize at the bottom, then you cancel out the common factor, and then you try to simplify it, which will give you this. But let me show you. So 4x squared plus 4x plus 1 is equals to 2x plus 1 squares. And how do I know this? Well, I can just use the options to my favor, really. Plus, I would assume that as this is a denominator, then most likely, or chances are, you will see something along these lines here, which, so 2x plus 1 will most likely be in the factor, and then when you see it, you actually just, you put that, you try to square it, because, it looks a bit familiar. And then when you put 2x plus 1, you can just see that 4x squared plus 4x plus 1 is just 2x plus 1 all squared. So you can see, like, the whole square this, and then multiply these two parts. So square 2x squared plus 1, and then 2 times 1 times 2x. That gives you 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. So this factorized. It's quite beautiful, isn't it? So 2x plus 1 to the power of 1 over 2x plus 1 to the power of 2. If for those who are mathematically minded, what's happening here is you do 2x. So this is a power rule. So essentially you do 1 minus 2, which is minus 1. So you get 2x plus 1 to the power of 1 minus 2, which is to the power of minus 1. which is just 1 over. So 2 minus 1 over 2x plus 1. And then in order to simplify, you must times 2 by 2x plus 1 at the top and the bottom. You can think of it as just 2 over 1. So 2x plus 1, 2x plus 1 minus 1 over 2x plus 1. That gives you 4x plus 2 minus 1 over 2x plus 1, which is just 4x plus 1 over 2x plus 1, which is 8. There we go. Okay, things are about to get a lot more interesting, as you guys can see here. They are getting a lot more interesting straight away, aren't they? I want you guys to give this question a go, by the way, because I feel like you will actually get some value out of this question. So just give this question a go in the meantime. Feel free to put your answers in the chat as well. Right, guys. Any answers? I'll start going through this. I just try to give you some time to the question as well. Try to give it a go. So we have a triangle and a circle. Basic stuff. This looks like a triangle, therefore it's a triangle. You can assume that. Well, it tells you it's a triangle as well. Okay. Okay, so what's the expression for the radius? So you must try to find this, essentially. Well, can't be that bad, can it? So what if you try to, okay, so first thing first, what is the angle of an equilateral triangle in a circle? So what are the angles? Correct, so they are 60 degrees. Okay. So 60, good stuff. However, what if, let me ask, what if we do something else? What if we do this? So this will be radius, and this will be 10 over 2, which is 5. So you get a triangle, which is essentially this. Amazing drawing skills. Okay, so this is R, this is 5, this is 90. And this is actually a lot harder than I thought to visualize. Okay, so essentially split this angle here into 30 degrees, because essentially it's 60 over 2, this one must be 60. Okay, so we have sine equals opposites upper over hypotenuse. Okay, good stuff. So in order to find R, so R is the hypotenuse. So R equals O over sine. Now you just have to think about which one do we have. We have 5, and the opposite is going to be 60. So that gives us 5 over sine 60, as you guys can see. So we have 5, 60. And that should give us the answer to be D. Any questions, guys? Also, you can go a bit further with this. So can you guys tell me what the value for sine 60 is? Quick fire. What's the value of sine 60? So root 3 over 2. So you can see that it's going to be 5 over root 3 over 2, which is 10 over root 3, which is 10 root 3 over 3. So that's the same as the answer here. 10 root 3 over 3. And yes, you are required to know these values for the answer. And then last question. So yeah, so how do you approach this question, guys? So how do you know which graphs will intersect? How would you do this question? Some of them say simultaneous, some of them say sketching. This was my dilemma as well when I did this question the first time. I was like, should I do a sketch or should I draw them? Should I do like the maths way? And it turns out that, you know, doing a sketch is a lot faster because you have to work out for 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 2 and 4, and 3 and 4. So you have to do essentially, well, quite a lot of maths, if I'm being honest. So yeah, it's not ideal, is it? So the best way to think about this is to draw them. Okay, so y equals 2x minus 1. How is that line going to look like? It should look like something like this, right, guys? Give us a where the intersects is going to be, well, that's incorrect. Should be minus 1. Can't draw it. Should be, that's minus 1. And then I guess you can also calculate the x-axis one as well. So when x equals, no, when y equals 0, then x is going to be half. Okay, so 1 minus x squared. So how will 1 minus x squared look like? Any ideas? Can you guys tell me what 1 minus x squared looks like? Okay, so a sad face curve. That is the best explanation I've heard so far. Oh no. Okay. Let me just redraw this quickly. Minus 1 half. And now we just, that is essentially this. Well, with these, it's a lot of practice really. If you've done A-level maths, then graphs should come out quite often. So essentially you've done so many of them that it just looks familiar. Okay, so 1 minus x squared. What would it look like, guys? You'll see some of them learn at GCSE, but not everyone. That is the problem with these tests. It's not everyone does them, if it makes sense. Okay, so line 3 is going to be this. Why do I keep missing it? I should have worn my glove for this. Didn't realize. Okay, so 1 minus, well, why is it in this? So 2x minus 1. It's going to be minus 1. Line 2 will essentially intersect at 1 because it's 1 minus x squared. So that's going to intersect here. Line 3 is going to be 1 minus x squared. So essentially, it's going to be crossing, it's going to touch the x-axis when x is 1, essentially. Okay. So And finally, we have 2 minus x, which is a line which is going to look like essentially this. Well, not really. So it's going to touch 2 and minus 2. No, 2 and 2. This one will touch at minus 1 and 1. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I've got to draw one of the lines there, which is 1 minus x squared. So this equation here is this is 1 minus x squared. This equation here is 2x minus 1. This equation here is 2 minus x. And now finally, we have to draw 1 minus x squared, which is going to look like this. One minus x all squared. So which lines actually don't intersect? I know it's a bit hard to see here, but which lines clearly do not intersect? Which lines here don't touch? Okay, so someone said 2 and 4. Do you guys agree or disagree with this? It makes sense because the line here is 2 minus x, which is 4, and this line here does not touch as well. Like you see that they're not touching. They're quite close, but they don't touch, which is 1 minus x squared. So 2 and 4. Therefore, the answer is E. You could have done it by, making them equal to each other and then trying to solve them. And then the one which will give you a, an impossible solution. Like for example, you want to try to complete the square, and it gives you negative, well, or imaginary numbers. So if you've done the maths, you know what I'm talking about. So essentially, when you get to a scenario like this, x minus 1 squared equals minus 1, then that means that they do not intersect. You'll get a solution of I, essentially. So x minus 1 equals I. You don't have to worry about what I is. It's further math stuff for those who can. Plus or minus I, plus or minus I plus 1. So you will not be getting anything like the BMAT, but if you want to know more about the theory, it's all about complex numbers if you want to do some further reading. Yeah. Some of you might be traumatized by this, those who do further maths. It's not a bad topic, but the applications get a bit annoying. But yeah, as far as we're concerned, this question is sorted. So now, what resources do you use? So I have a YouTube channel as well, and I have r/BMAT exam if you want to check those out. You can come to Surgeries as well, where I go through some questions. You can go through the WhatsApp group chats or Discord group chats. I'm very active on the WhatsApp group chats. If you want to ask questions about anything, so it can be med applications, it can be TSA, it can be applications to the US, Hong Kong, wherever you want to ask. I am on the group chats. I'm one of the admins as well. I can send you the link. One sec. One second. Okay, so here you go, and here you go. Okay. Sometimes I make some reviews on my subreddits. Recently, I can't talk about this actually. But yeah, so there has been, sometimes I make some reviews on behalf of the community. So essentially what we do is we get the moderator to sit down together and we try to review everything that we can. So for example, what value does a company provide? Are the courses good? Have they helped students? They have a good track records? And then we make a review on behalf of the community. So those reviews do not reflect any of the views, but they are here. If you want to get help, I highly suggest you get tuition. And the reason for this is, if you get the right tutors, you'll get an amazing score. You really do, guys. Because a lot of people they don't really have that foundation. And let's be honest, it's September. You have like a month left for the BMAT. If you aren't getting sixes by now, or five, it depends what you need, by the way. If you're playing for Oxbridge, you should be trying to get fives or low sixes at this point. If you're getting lower, then yeah. And by that, fives and sixes or higher, I mean, if you are doing the new papers, like 2019 onwards, if you're getting below that, then I'll be a bit worried. As a good rule of thumb, people drop about 1 to 2 marks, 1 to 2 scores in the real exam compared to the practice papers, including past papers. So just to bear in mind, but if you're not getting like high sixes or high sevens, then you might be a bit, in a bit of trouble. But yeah, how do you solve this? First, you can get tuition from someone who knows how to give you those scores. Be very careful who your teacher is. Make sure you fact check everything. Remember, don't be impressed by their scores in university. And yeah, you might also want to get some books, bundles. You might get some videos as well on the BMAT. You might want to go on YouTube as well. It really depends on what your budget is. But these are all your options, really. We're doing the questions. Why is this slide here? And then Q&A. So feel free to ask me any questions. If you want to find my channel, it's Martin Pereira Pathways. The M, the P, and P are all capital P's, by the way. So Martin Pereira Pathways, with the M and the P's being capital letters. Everything else is not. So yeah, I remove my videos every year because I just try to remake them. So there might be some new ones coming up this year. No promises though. I've been quite busy with students. But yeah. So Q&A time. What questions do you have? Are the recordings for other surgeries available? Yes, they are. So you can find them on 6med.co.uk/QA surgery. So the recordings are available on the 6med website. Also, do you have any international students here, by the way? It depends. So are you guys home or international students? So the webinar is meant to last an hour. It kind of finished already, but I'm just kind of, I don't want to overrun a little bit. Just answering your questions, really. So yeah, it ended. You can go if you want, but I'm just answering questions, which I highly recommend these safe for because you can ask questions. Okay, so I have empty baseline assessments a week before BMATs. These grades are going to be used for UCAS. Should I prioritize BMATs or my A-levels assessments? A bit of both. You are in a bit of a trick situation because, you know what I recommend though, and this is my unethical life pro tips right here. Actually, I can't say it on the stream, but there's a very neat methods. So you just kind of get rid of all that worry. Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one, really. You should prioritize your BMAT because the BMAT is the most important thing in your application. But the thing is, A-levels allow you to apply. The BMAT gets you through the door. So it's worth bearing that in mind. That A-levels, they will help you to essentially be considered, but the BMAT is the one that's going to compare you to all applicants. So they're important, but in different ways. But the BMAT is the most important test. If I'm getting 7.35 or 7.5, 7.35, that's not really a real score, is it? Then what will the actual paper mark be? It really depends because first thing first, we don't know how hard the test will be this year. But I kind of have a rough idea. But even though I have a rough idea, I can't say for certain because that would be just me giving an educated guess. They're usually correct, but I don't see myself as a reliable source for predicting papers because I'm not an exam writer, so I'll be just guessing based on previous data. But as a good rule of thumb, I would say that if you're getting 7.5s in past papers, it depends. So are you talking about 7.5s in 2003, or you talk about 7.5 in 2021? Two different things. If you are talking about the latter, then 2021, then you'll be in a pretty good position. You should be expecting 6s. If you're getting 7.5s in 2003, then I would say 5s, maybe 4s, sometimes less, because those papers are a lot easier. What studying techniques for maths you recommend for someone who hasn't touched maths since GCSE? Interesting. So you haven't done maths since GCSE. Can you tell me a bit more about this? I'm very interested, actually, because most students that I come across, they don't do physics, but they usually do biochem and maths. That's usually a combination. I myself, I took biochem, physics, math for the maths, Spanish, Portuguese, and Russian. So I was in a pretty good position myself when I applied, but I'm just interested. So how come you didn't pick maths? Because it's definitely something that they will ask. Okay, while you're answering this, I'm just going to look at the Q&A. Okay, so because there was less cheating this year, there'll be no cheating. I hope there'll be no cheating. And also, as you have, you remember you had those 2 weeks to study essentially. So you had half term to prepare for. This is no longer the case. I would say the boundaries will be very similar to 2019. So if I were to guess, they'll be pretty much the exact same as 2019 BMAT, because it won't be higher or lower, because there won't be this was the last time that the BMAT was in November and it was on paper. So I would say it's safe to assume that the boundaries for this year will be very similar to 2019. Again, I might be wrong, but this was my advice to my students, the ones that I teach, I told them 2020 inflated, 2021 inflated, 2019 perfect. So if they're trying to push the exam back, that means that they want the exam to be harder essentially, and they don't want to lower boundaries essentially, because people will be less prepared. There's a few cats that have A-levels to worry about. So I would say that 2019 boundaries are very plausible for this year. So if you've done BMAT 2019, I would say those would be the boundaries. If I were to guess, I would say the BMAT will be a lot harder this year, just because. Can you see how they had this weird distribution here? I would say that they want to make the boundaries like they used to be, because in section 1 they're a bit inflated, in section 2 they're a bit inflated. They should not be happening. Neither should this. 16% of candidates should be getting a 4. This should not be happening. If you look at previous papers, like 2019 in particular, that is a bit of a problem. So if I were to say that people will be hard this year, especially for problem solving, because problem solving has been a lot easier than expected. So problem solving will be harder. Critical thinking will be as hard as last year. Sections will be a bit harder. I would say that they're just trying to test the waters out, because they want to see, what will happen if we make problem solving harder, and so we push the exam back. Because this is the first year that there is a BMAT on paper without big analysis. Those big questions that they had in the past. So those questions have been removed. So I would say that they're trying to do some testing here. And this is like my opinion. If I was an examiner, this is what I would do. I'd push the exam back. I'd make it harder and see how it affects the boundaries, because they're trying to push them back so that you don't need 100% to get a 9 in section 1, essentially. You needed 90% in previous years to get a 9 in section 1. Since 2020, you need 100%. It's ridiculous. So I would say that they will try to push these boundaries back quite a lot. And this is my opinion. Cambridge Assessment might have a different vision. I don't think they have a vision at all. But yeah, I would say that as far as difficulty goes, it should be fine, but it's going to be harder, which is great though for those who are actually preparing. If you aren't preparing, then that might be a bit of a sticky one. But very interesting combination, biochem and Latin. This reminds me of like those texts like etc. in GCSE. I have so many fun stories on Latin lessons because I went to a pretty good school and we had like a priest teaching us Latin. It was top band, so I can guarantee that. Anyways, yeah. But in terms of how you study for maths, I would say that you should just look at two things. Look at the section 2 knowledge guides, because you haven't learned physics and you haven't learned maths. That is a recipe for disaster for the BMATs. If you're starting now, you still have time. Don't get me wrong, but you are in trouble because you have like 5 weeks, give or take, until you test. Maybe a bit more actually, but 5-6 weeks, somewhere around those lines is what you have. So you need to read the section 2 knowledge guides. If you need a tutor, and if something that you want to, go for it, because if you pick the right tutor, read house. Again, I've seen students going from 4s to 7s and 8s in the real tests because they got carried by their mentor essentially. So it can be a good thing. So in that case, you should be looking at the section 2 knowledge guide. So section 2, assume knowledge guides. This can be very useful, by the way. So yeah. Okay, so yep, I do. But I don't tell people what my unit is because long story short, yeah, actually, I have already said it in the previous session. So if you have any football fans here, then okay, there's a bit of a long story there. Why don't tell people where I go? Okay, so what studying technique for maths do you recommend for someone that hasn't touched maths in GCSE? I would say just read the guides and then try to learn as you go along, essentially. Because with math, it's all about practice. Like you have to keep going, and eventually it's going to kick in. You essentially will get it eventually. Like, try to do them on time first because that helps, and then you keep developing. Okay, so best way to prepare for section 2 and section 3. Section 3 have a structure ready for the exam. So think about structure which you want to use for your essay, and build a knowledge bank. So what one machines does is, and this is genius. I actually quite like it. He does section 3 open book when he's doing with past papers. So he's cheating a little bit, but what that allows him to do is he can do a lot of research in the planning phase. So he can get a whole knowledge bank as he goes through all questions. So for example, one question asks about the duty of a doctor. He can Google all about it. So he's learning as he's practicing section 3. I think that's a very brilliant idea. And that's something that I personally recommend. Section 2, it's all about strategies. Make sure you go over the content first, because if you don't know something, then learn the content and then learn the maths. No, practice the maths. So learn the maths, practice the maths afterwards. Because maths is very important, because then you need those skills for maths to do on physics and chemistry, because there are a lot of small tricks in the physical sciences which require you to have a good level of mathematical ability. That was a good decision. Philosophy is great. We didn't do it as an A level, but we had this enrichment group in my school which taught philosophy. It was great. We learned all about Mills-Hunt principle, Aquinas, all that stuff. I don't remember about, but it was pretty solid. Philosophical zombies as well, if you're interested in that. Okay, so really answer this. what score do you need for Oxford Biomeds? There's an interesting one. So have you looked at the distribution for this year? Because there was something interesting that I saw. So last year, one person who got a 9, well, they pretty much got the maximum score possible, give or take. It was like 9, 8 point something, 5, 8, or whatever. They got rejected without an interview. And that's something that I was like, why? This was like, it was so bizarre. It's still on there, by the way, if you want to see it. Someone got rejected pretty much 100%, and everyone else below that got shortlisted. It was crazy. So there was like a precedence set, which, of like these weird admissions phenomenons. But as a good rule of thumb for biomedical sciences, 663A is a solid score for home students. It will give you a big advantage of 3.58. You want to have these scores for biomeds, at the very least. If you want to pretty much guarantee your chances of getting in, then 7.740. Those will pretty much guarantee your place, or at least a place in interviews. So the person who got pretty much, I don't remember the exact same score. I think it was something like 9.9, 4.5, or 5, whatever. They were not shortlisted at all for biomeds. For medicine, this has never happened. But for biomeds, for some reason, they were not shortlisted. I have a theory. They did not meet the grade requirements. So you know what you need? Like, you have like A star, AA, something like this for Oxford, for the requirements. If you did not meet those requirements, you do not get shortlisted. And I think that's what happens. Some person probably got screwed over because of their center assessment grades, the CAGs. So they probably had like A, B, or A, B, or whatever. And then the thing is, they got a really good BMAT score because their tests, they were a lot better in the tests than in A levels. And then, as they didn't meet the requirements, they got rejected. So yeah, this is why I was saying, focus on your A levels because predictions are important, but remember that BMAT is what we use. Like, A levels allow you to get through the door, and I think this person's A levels didn't let them get through that door in the first place. But then, yeah, it's a bit of an unusual scenario, to be honest. Okay, so how much time? Okay, so how do you find a good tutor? It really depends. So some criteria for this includes, well, do they have a good score? Do they have any teaching experience? What are the success rates? Can you provide any references? All those things are good ways to find a tutor. Either someone do you know, a friend of a friend. Like sometimes your friend that got a good score, well, he might have used a tutor that he found useful, so he might recommend that to you. Or you can find them online, really. So you can get them through SecMed, you can get them through, you can get them like privately. Some of the really good ones also work for themselves. So it really depends. Yeah. How many BMAT universities do you recommend applying to? Great question. What if I tell you that most of my students are applying for 4 BMAT universities? What if I tell you they're applying for 4 BMAT universities? And I had a pretty much 100% success rate. No, it's not pretty much. It was 100% success rate for last year for medical offers. So everyone got an offer, even though they applied for 4 BMAT universities, which is something that schools discourage. The thing is, what people do is they're like, okay, so let's apply to Oxbridge, let's apply to Imperial, and then let's apply to UCL. And maybe, to make it fun for the gigs, let's put KCL here as well, or Edinburgh. What happens is they get rejected. If they mess up their tests, 3 rejections, they panic, the UCAT choice gets messed up. 4 rejections, reapplies. Classic. What I recommend doing is apply for 1 hard university. So that can be Oxbridge, 1 ambitious choice. These are usually Imperial UCL or UCL. And then you have 2 safe choices. So this can be BSMS, Leeds, Lancaster, or you can put 2 UCAT universities as well. But these are the BMAT universities that my students apply to. as far as I'm concerned, everyone gets an offer from the program. Everyone's pretty much studying medicine now. So I'm not concerned at all with those methods. So this goes against what most schools, advise. But I have worked with the University of Oxford before, and it was more a partnership. Just to put that clear, make that clear. But with the partnership, we kind of agreed that it was not a risky decision because with the UCATs, you don't know what the cutoff will be for the universities. The only way that you can apply for BMAT university, for a UCAT university, so if you set the UCATs, if you get 3,000 or above, then you can apply pretty much everywhere, and you know that you'll get interviews. Anything below that, and you'll be guessing. For example, 2,900, 2,800, more like 2,800. So 2850, you can apply to Bristol and KCL, but you can't be sure that you'll get in, or you won't be shortlisted. It's quite risky. So as far as risk is concerned, if you are not in the top 1% UCATs, it's nowhere as risky. The risk is the exact same for full BMATs and full UCATs or a mix, because you will not know what the cutoff will be. Yeah. Oxbridge Medicine. So for Oxbridge Medicine, if you're home students, you would like to have something like 6.6, 6.2. I recommend 6.6, 6.6, 3.58. This will be a solid score for interviews and This is the offer holders average, give or take a few points, 6.2, 6.1. I recommend 6.6 because you want to be a bit above the average for offer holders. So this is solid for home students. For internationals, 7.7, 3.5 or above. It's very good for international students. Okay. UCL med school, you want to get high fives or low sixes for UCL. International, you want to have high sixes. If you got 2860 UCATs, depends on your SUT, but I would say 2 UCATs and 2 BMATs is safe-ish. Safe-ish. But yeah, sounds good to me. Nothing wrong with it. How much time do you suggest spending on BMAT revision each day from now to the tests? Well, at least 3 hours a day. I recommend 4 to 5 now because it's getting sticky now. You might be asking, why so much? Okay, guys, you spend about 150 hours in the classroom for each A-level each year. Some of you a bit more, some of you a bit less, but 150 hours is the guidance. Why would you spend less than this a year on the BMAT? Because the BMAT is equally as important, if more important, with shortlisting and offer holders, or offer holding selection. So I would recommend 150 hours for the BMAT for learning strategies and practicing levers, because that is what you spend in one A-level. And remember, one A-level is not more important than the BMAT. I would say that you should learn the strategies and the content and then practice questions. You need to not look at BMAT scores. No. UCAT universities would only look at your UCAT score. If you get all the criteria in terms of academic and BMATs, but get nervous into your chances for acceptance in Oxbridge, it depends on how good your academics are. The thing is, what they do is, this might have changed, by the way, but since I last checked, they rank you, so they don't know what your BMAT score is before, like your interviewers. So they give you an interview score, so 1, 2, and 3. So 1 is that they want you, 2 is a maybe, 3 is a rejection. If you get, let's say, 1-1, you'll get it. That's it. Good job. If you get a 1-2 or a 2-2, then your BMAT score will play a role, because essentially they have the interview score, so it can be 1-1, and so interview and have the BMAT score afterwards. So there can be 1-1, 4-4, 3A. Like, so it depends on the tutor, because there is not like a hard rule for offer holders at Oxbridge. Essentially, teachers like, do I like this person? Do I want to teach them? Do they have like reasonable scores to endure the course? If the answer is yes for this, then you'll get them. The thing is, interviews are more of a neutral selection here, because the teacher is thinking, okay, so do I want to teach this person for 6 years? And also, will they benefit from this style of teaching? So these are the two questions that they have to ask, which is why they have these interview styles, which look like tutorials. So yeah, tutorials are essentially how you'll be learning for the next 6 years at Oxbridge. So they want you to make sure that you have this. So if he gets a bad interview, and bad, I mean just like a 1-2 or 2-2, so it was pretty good, but not excellent, then a high score will still save your application. So yeah, a good BMAT score, those go a long way. Like for example, if you have like 2-2 and you have 995A, then they'll be like, the guy has a solid score. Reasonable interview, but he has a very good score. And the BMAT is an indicator of degree success. So the higher your BMAT, the high BMAT is correlated with the high chance of getting a first class at Oxbridge. So yeah, that is all for today, guys. So do you have any questions that you want to ask? There should be all. Any final thoughts, guys? Q&A. I don't. Well, there might be, but the thing is, sometimes what they do is they have bursaries, but most of the time, I think it might be a bit late now to apply for one, but you might want to check. Some of them are. BMAT universities do not see your UCAT score. Well, in theory, the reason why I say in theory is because I know someone, like it's like my personal friend, it's not a friend of a friend of a friend. I know someone who was it was the Oxford. The teacher was like, looks like you have a very good UCAT score. And she was like, how did he know that? So she had a pretty good score. She was like 2,800 and something. So yeah, it was a bit of an interesting one. So they can't see them in theory, but that event maybe that claim. But who knows? Might have been a coincidence or actually the case. No worries at all, guys. So all questions have been answered. Thank you so much for attending, and I'll see you in the next surgery. Goodbye.